want to be, but I think both you and I are on the same page that August in DC is kind of awesome. And if you stick around, there are a lot of great things to do, like what you did this past week. You checked out a free Stevie Wonder concert, a pop-up concert. And it's my understanding that one person in this room was dancing at that concert like there was no tomorrow. Well, what happened?
I would look desperately for the video that I do have somewhere of this famous person dancing and enjoying it. But it's up on Capitol Hill, right outside the Armory and right in front of the RFK place. You know, Stevie Wonder is doing this pop-up concert thing here, Philadelphia, New York. And then under the rules, the Vince DC was only given 48 hours notice to put this thing on, and they couldn't announce it till after 8:30. They said there's going to be a concert. Then they could say who it was. So I got there. I was just going to go by and take a quick picture of him and move on. Then I heard, well, maybe the mayor might come. And then it was such a good summer event. And we need some good summer events these days. I walked around with my camera to see who was dancing. And would you like to introduce the dancer?
He is talking about our in-studio guest today, and that is Kaya Henderson. She is Chancellor for DC Public Schools. Kaya Henderson, welcome.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
So the Stevie Wonder concert was fun, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's my question for you. Was Tom Sherwood dancing at the Stevie Wonder concert?
Tom Sherwood was not dancing at the Stevie Wonder concert, and he probably was the only person not dancing at the Stevie Wonder concert.
I was trying to hold a steady shot with him. You know, listen, I know what I can do and can't do, and dancing is not one of them.
All right, in fairness to you, I probably would be dancing at the Stevie Wonder concert, but I'm not so sure that what people would see they would call dancing. They would see movement.
Who cares?
It would be more of a celebration.
It would be,
but it wouldn't necessarily be dancing.
On Seinfeld, the Elaine dance would be more popular than what I.
It's from the DC area. She went to the Holton Arms School for Girls in Bethesda, Maryland. But thank you for coming. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
And we're also joined in studio today by our guest analyst, the wonderful Kavitha Cardoza. She is a special correspondent for WAMU 88.5. And speaking of fun in the summer, or hard work in the summer, Kavitha, I know you've been burning the candle at both ends all summer long, working on a new documentary that's part of your Breaking Ground series that people will be able to hear pretty soon on WAMU. What have you been working on, and when will people be able to hear it?
First, I have to say thank you for not introducing me as Kavitha Cardoza, aka Two Left Feet. September 14th. We will air a 5-part series based on the documentary, and September 21st, we will debut the documentary. It's called Lower Income Higher Ed. It's set in DC. We follow one student, a DC student. We took him back to Michigan to a college he went to. We're talking about a lot of what DCPS is working on with area colleges. And so, I don't want to say much more, but
I'm looking really forward to it.
So is it a good story?
It's a great story.
Say the dates one more time, just so people can hear it.
September 14th, that week, all through Morning Edition. And then September 21st, we will debut the documentary. That is 1 hour of basically following a student, Christopher Feaster.
Excellent. I'm looking forward to it. If you want to join our conversation with Kavitha Cardoza and Kaya Henderson, you can call us at 800-433-8850. You can tweet us at Kojo Show. You can email us at kojo@wamu.org. And your summer is fast coming to a close. School opens on Monday.
Yes.
And I have to say that if I were one of those students reporting for duty next week, and I were asked to fill out one of those how I spent my summer vacation essays, one of the things that I would not be able to say that I've spent my summer doing, Tom, is writing Facebook questions for Republican presidential candidates appearing on Sunday morning talk shows. And I'll explain this in a second.
Yeah, I hope so.
So last Sunday on Meet the Press, Chuck Todd was interviewing Donald Trump, the real estate mogul, the celebrity reality TV person, however people want to describe Donald Trump. He's running for president. And he asked him a question from a Michael Martinez about whether DC should be granted statehood. And a lot of people who were watching on Sunday heard, I know Michael Martinez. I know he cares about DC statehood. This must be the Mike that I know. And I was actually running when this was going on. I was out on the C&O Canal towpath, which was lovely. And I got back and my phone was blowing up. I had tweets, I had text messages, I had emails. My parents wanted to know if this Michael Martinez was me. And I had to explain to all of them, look, there's another Michael Martinez out there. I don't know who he is. He cares about statehood. He has a great name and I like his style, but no, it wasn't me.
But the answer?
The answer is, a couple of days later, followed up. I went on the Facebook thread and I found the question that they solicited for the air. And it turns out that Michael D. Martinez is a political science professor at the University of Florida. He lives in Gainesville. And I emailed him. I said, I saw your question. I explained the story that people thought that his question was from me. And I wanted to know why, of all of the issues that he could have asked of the presidential candidates, because they were asking for questions for anybody, not just for Donald Trump, why he would ask about DC voting rights. And he said, I'll make time. We'll talk on the phone. So we talked on the phone yesterday. He's a great guy. He's very, very smart. Obviously, he's a political science professor at a major university. And the answer that he gave me was really interesting. He said, what I wanted to do was ask the presidential candidates a question that I thought at the end of the day was about basic fairness. And I wanted to see how they would handle it as an intellectual exercise, because there are different ways that you can answer it. But at the end of the day, you're talking about a situation where hundreds of thousands of people who live in the nation's capital, at the very heart of our democracy, don't have the right to fully participate in it.
650,000.
There you go. And it doesn't surprise me at all that you know that number off the top of your head. And I wanted to give him a high five. And I know you've got more specific thoughts about Mr. Trump's answer to that question, and I'll let you give them in a second. But I have to say that now, for the second time in 3 weeks, a nationwide audience has been forced to confront that reality, that this many people living in the nation's capital don't have the right to fully participate in our democracy. And I have to say that that in and of itself is a good thing, regardless of how seriously you treat Donald Trump's presidential campaign, whether or not you think it's dangerous, and what you thought of his answer, which sort of didn't really make a whole lot of sense. He wants to do what's best for the people of District of
They're
Columbia.
good people. As you know,
He said we have a good feeling, whatever that means.
If you listen to him carefully, whenever he talks about a group, and now he tries to do it more since of the horrible things he said about immigrants, he says, those are good people. Those are good people. Those are smart people, which he actually sounds like he's saying, I'm a good person. I'm a smart person. But beyond that, he said he would want to do whatever was good for the good people of Washington. That was his answer. And of course, people like the fact that the national political figure, and he certainly is that, given his polling, that would acknowledge that we have those rights. But I object to his characterization that we're good people and we ought to get those rights. We should have those rights because we're citizens of the United States, and we don't have to be good. Everybody tells us, well, if we just solve our crime problem or our school problem or this problem or that problem, then maybe we'll take you seriously. Well, no, if we did that, you know, Illinois would lose its statehood because it has 4 governors in a row gone to prison. So it just drives me crazy when people say that, and somehow if we're just like nice animals in the zoo, people will let us join. I just hate it.
The other Michael Martinez, who does happen to live in Florida, I asked him if he saw the John Oliver sketch that was on Last Week Tonight a couple weeks ago, and the suggestion that if people are so hard up on making sure, well, the flag only has 50 stars on it, we have to keep it at 50, whether or not we should trade with Florida. And Florida should, their statehood should be dropped. And he actually said that was pretty funny. He didn't take any offense to it.
It's all good, well and good. And I won't go on a rant here, but I'm close to it. Is that, you know, that we can make fun of it, and I criticize the advocates here for not being more aggressive and being more creative. But the fact is, we are American citizens. We meet every test of citizenship, except we don't get to choose our leaders.
Chancellor Henderson and Kavitha, we are going to talk about a couple of political issues before we jump squarely into schools. But if you want to jump in at any point, please feel free to do so. Tom, I have to ask you, while we're on sort of the general topic of wacky stuff, what happened in Virginia this week? Can you explain that to me? They went back for a special session. No one knows whether that special session, or they're arguing about whether it actually ended.
Well, you know, I was looking just before coming on the air to make sure we could understand this, but, you know, the governor, McAuliffe, called a special session for August 17th because the state is under court order to do a redistricting plan that fixes the gerrymandering in the 3rd district down in the Norfolk area, where they essentially put all the black people into one district so they could dilute their influence in other districts. The Republicans don't want to do that. There is a September 1st deadline to do it by the court. Republicans didn't want to do it. And so they decided they would use a special session this week to scuttle the governors, the Democratic governors, nominee or appointment to the State Supreme Court. But the Republicans ran into a roadblock because one member of the Senate, who's a Republican, who is Watkins of Powhatan, however they say that name, he said he was sick of all this partisan wrangling, and he voted with the Democrats to adjourn. So the Senate adjourned without doing anything, but the House didn't adjourn. And there's a rule that says one body can't adjourn for more than 3 days if the other one doesn't. So we're here at the end of the week, not sure what the hell is going to happen.
And it's a big partisan fight. And
I'm surprised I said that as clearly as I think I said it.
And any semblance left of the so-called Virginia way of civility, I think, has basically been thrown out the window.
Yeah, and yes, you know, the Virginia gentleman thing is apparently on vacation somewhere because it's more like Jersey politics. But Michael Pope, the WAMU reporter, said the Virginia state legislature is paralyzed, which is, again, not funny.
One last topic about Virginia, and one that isn't funny. What's going to happen with Bob McDonnell? He lost an appeal at the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, I think, in the 4th District this week to stay out of prison while he challenges his corruption conviction to the Supreme Court. What's going to happen from here?
Well, he's got one step left. If he were a baseball player, he'd be batting 0. He lost in trial court. He lost an appeal. He lost an appeal to the appeals court. And now he's at the Supreme Court hoping that they will overturn his conviction. The problem is he's having been convicted and losing his first appeal. He now is scheduled to be going to prison. And the court said they're not going to hold up his report to prison to serve his 2-year sentence. Is what he got for 11 counts. And so here's the process. The Federal Bureau of Probation has to assemble all the information about him and about the case, send it to the Bureau of Prisons. It will analyze, and that has to be done, I think, by next week when the court order is in effect. Then the Bureau of Prisons can take some period of time to figure out which prison they will send Governor McDonnell to. Now, he's asked to go to the Petersburg low security prison in Petersburg, just outside of Richmond. But we don't know if it'll take 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4. And then the Bureau of Prisons has to send him a certified letter saying, "Dear Governor McDonnell, you are to report to X prison at X time, and don't be late," because that's the worst thing you can do. Because you can, and so that's what we're waiting for. It looks like, unless something odd happens with the Supreme Court, the former governor of Virginia could be headed to prison in a matter of weeks. And just so you'll know how bad or how weak his case is with the Supreme Court, it gets out about 10,000 appeals every year. It takes about 75 or 80 of them. Wow. Less than 1%. So maybe the next step is maybe he'll just start serving his time.
Somebody who not that long ago was considered a vice presidential candidate or an eventual presidential candidate. That's a long fall
he
from
had the Sterling, and he did so much for Northern Virginia roads, and actually was, although he's quite conservative as Attorney General, he actually was a pretty moderate governor for many policies. This is a huge, horrible embarrassment, not only for him and his family, but for the state of Virginia.
I want to pivot from this to another piece of sad news from this past week. The District of Columbia lost one of its most respected and most effective advocates. The country lost one of its civil rights giants this past weekend when Julian Bond, former chair of the NAACP, founding member of SNCC, former member of the Georgia State Legislature, died on Saturday in Florida. And he's somebody who spent his entire life standing up for people right up until the end. And I'm going to use Eleanor Holmes Norton's words here to describe what he meant to D.C. rather than my own. This was the statement she put out after his death. "District residents will be forever grateful to Julian Bond for lending his civil rights celebrity to our cause for full citizenship, D.C. voting rights, and statehood. Julian Bond was not a public official when he died, but he gave his extraordinary life to serving his country and remedying the most profound defect in American democracy. Julian lived a life of service both to the movement and to the country he loved." Tom Sherwood, Julian Bond left a pretty big mark on this country and on this city, didn't he?
Yes, he did. He was nominated for vice president when he was too young to serve, which was pretty good at this indication.
And I know you saw him once recently.
Yeah, my quick story about him is I've known him because he's from Atlanta, and I had seen him a lot, and I've known him for a long time. Can't say I was a friend, but I always respected him. I was at the Portrait Gallery one day not long ago, before the spring, and I saw him and his wife sitting in the covered area out the courtyard, and they looked like they were having a nice time. So I walked on by and went just a short distance away into the bookstore, and I was looking into the gift shop, and I heard this voice say, "So you don't speak now?" I turned around, it was him, and scowling at me. And so we went over and he invited me over, and we sat and talked for a while. And he talked about he was going to do another tour of the old South and the civil rights scenes, historic sites, and thought I should go. I said, well, I'm already planning to go to Cuba, so I'd like to go, but it probably can't, and didn't. And I regret now that I didn't go. Would have been great to spend a week with Julian Bond running through the South.
On a personal level, I have to say that one of the moments where I've been most in awe of anything at the time that I've been working at WAMU came a couple of years ago. Kojo was interviewing Harry Belafonte in the studio, and Julian Bond just happened to be listening to the show that day and called at the station and said, I want to come and say hi and I want to watch. And we said, okay. And all of a sudden there he was in the control room watching Kojo interview this other incredible person. And afterwards they took a photo outside of the studio, and seeing the three of them together is one of the most awesome things that I've seen at the station.
He was one of the most mild-mannered but strong-willed people you would ever meet. And some people mistook that politeness and for something else, weakness or something. But, he was tough. He ran for Congress. John Lewis, they had a tough battle, but they reconciled after that, and they remained friends. And I don't know, Chancellor Henderson, you're probably too young to know. But did you know of him and his work?
I didn't get the chance to meet him, but I know a lot about his work. And he stands as a champion of the civil rights movement. We wouldn't be where we are if it wasn't for Julian Bond and the sacrifice that he made over the course of his life on behalf of, our nation's most vulnerable residents.
And even as the head of the NAACP, he lived so quietly in Washington. You could see him just on the street or somewhere like that, and you would think, oh, there's a nice-looking guy walking along, just very disciplined and strong-willed in so many different ways. Thank you for bringing him up.
And he will be missed. You're listening to the Politics Hour on WAMU 88.5. I am not Kojo Nnamdi. I am Michael Martinez sitting in for Kojo today. We're talking with Kai Henderson. She is Schools Chancellor for the District of Columbia, and with Tom Sherwood, our resident analyst, a reporter for NBC4 and a columnist for the current newspapers, and also with our guest analyst today, Kavitha Cardoza, special correspondent for WAMU 88.5. If you've got questions for the Chancellor, now's the time to call 800-433-8850. You can email at kojo@wamu.org or tweet us at Kojo Show. And one issue before we get to talking about schools, but I would like to get your thoughts about this as well, Chancellor Henderson. It's been a violent week. It's been a violent summer in the district. There were several shootings this week, one including a young person who was shot in front of a church in Southeast. There was somebody who was murdered in front of a metro stop in Shaw. I know that you were at the mayor's press conference earlier this week with the police chief.
Right.
What do you make of what's been going on for the past couple of months, and what do you make of how the mayor and the police chief are responding to it?
Well, the mayor has told people in NBC4 that there's no quick fix to this. It is stunning that there has been an upsurge in violence in a number of cities, but that doesn't make anyone here feel better. There's been the accidental shooting of a reporter on Alabama Avenue, and then the young man who was shot near 7th and S Street. So the violence is. Sometimes I hate to say it, but it's true that when violence is just kind of within the groups or shooting at each other, that's one thing, and we don't like, and we'd like to arrest people. But when innocent bystanders or passersby are hurt, it's really dangerous for the city to have an image. We're not anywhere like the late 80s and 90s when we just had 400 murders, homicides, more than 400. But we do have a situation where the city's uneasy. The mayor and the chief have put out more police. They've raised some reward monies to try to get people to be more cooperative in reporting.
I think it's $2,500.
It was $1,000. If you report an illegal gun, it was $1,000. Now it's $2,500. If you report on a location of a gun that was used in a killing, that's a $10,000 award. But the more police are on the street, the union's not happy with the chief. Part of the problem is the union, though, is rarely happy with the chief, but it says that the chief has changed the deployment scheme in the city, so there are fewer officers on the street gathering intelligence to stem some of these crimes before they happen, and that's a fight back and forth between them. But the fact is, I think people are frustrated. and worried, and they're looking for specific plans, and it's kind of hard to have one.
Kavitha,
Can I
you got a
jump
question
in?
for the
Yeah, I
chancellor
do.
here.
I have a question for the chancellor. Chancellor, often, the violence we see in neighborhoods and on streets spills into schools and the classrooms.
Sure.
And this has been a violent summer. And I'm wondering how prepared you feel for kids coming back to school, often from different jurisdictions, coming to the same school. How are we doing on school resource officers? How do you, what is the DCPS plan?
So, I actually think the DCPS plan is how we are approaching this school year speaks volumes to this very problem. I think that part of the reason why we see this violence is because people feel desperate. People don't see opportunities to move out of terrible living situations. And that frustration boils over and is exacerbated by, a glut of illegal weapons on the street. And so little things that used to just be arguments now become reasons to shoot. And I think that we've spent a lot of time at DCPS trying to fix broken kids or address kids who are from under-resourced backgrounds and families. And it's just a whole deficit perspective way of thinking about the issues that we need to solve. This year, we're not focusing on the deficits. We're focusing on the potential that our young people have, the resources that they bring, even if they are not traditionally recognized by the majority culture. We're trying to inspire our young people to greatness instead of trying to remediate them to death. And so what you'll see at DCPS is more extracurricular activities, more athletics. We have had a 30% increase in young people participating in athletics over the last year. And we want to drive that up because we know when kids are engaged in athletics and extracurricular activities, their grades go up. They don't have time to be on the street because they're in practice and that kind of thing. We're doing, we have more than 250 electives, up more than 100 courses over last year. Why? Because we want to engage our young people. We want to help them develop their passions. We have career academies where our young people will have paid internships this year. And we're focusing.
That's new.
Yes, it is new. And we're focusing.
I like that word, paid.
Paid, right? Because, at the end of the day, our young people want to work. Our young people have been frustrated because they haven't seen the connection between school and work. And so we're being very direct about that connection by engaging them in career academies and paying them over the summer and during the school year so that they can be in industry-related jobs. We want to offer our young people hope. We also have great partnerships with MPD. We have amazing school resource officers who I think if school violence on the whole is down and, we're still vigilant. We're not, this is still an issue for us because we know that neighborhood issues spill into school. But we've done a really good job, I think, of creating great areas of communication between the police department, our roving leaders, our DCPS school operations teams. We have nonprofit organizations and churches that help us provide safe passages for our young people. So this is a citywide problem. This is not just a DCPS schools problem. And I'm really pleased that the whole entire city is working with us to make school at least a safe place for young people to go in a neighborhood.
It can be a refuge for many. For the middle schools and high schools particularly, you do have security at the doors where people have to come, metal detectors in high schools.
We do.
And you have security officers there.
We do.
And then if you provide enough things to do in the school and on the school grounds, that gets them out of harm's way.
That's our expectation.
I want to ask a question about something else that's new and how it possibly relates to violence or keeping kids safe. It was recently announced that kids will now be able to ride Metro Rail for free.
Yes.
They've previously been allowed to ride Metro Bus for free.
Only last year. These are
Mayor Bowser got this passed in the council before she became mayor, and she's very proud of this.
You say this is part of something that could also address truancy. How so?
This is how this issue even came to be. The council has been holding our feet to the fire, and rightly so, on trying to reduce the amount of truant students that we have. It was 26% 2 years ago, and now we're down to 17%, which is helpful. But, we were working with legislators who had all these different ideas about curbing truancy. And I said, well, has anybody talked to the kids who are truant? Let's figure out why they don't come to school. And so I
Mhm.
met with a group of kids from Ballou. I met with a group of kids from Anacostia to say, why don't you come to school? And one of the biggest barriers was transportation. Many of them travel to school, and by the middle of the month, they didn't have enough money on their Metro cards. And so we raised that through the citywide truancy task force as a huge issue. Then Councilwoman Bowser took up the issue and got enough funding to be able to allow kids to ride free on buses last year. And now, as mayor, one of her first acts was to ensure that we can now provide Metro transportation. And in most jurisdictions, kids don't have to pay to go to school. We have a choice system where kids can move anywhere in the city to go to school, and that's a good thing. But they shouldn't have to pay. We should pay for that. And so I fundamentally believe that you'll see our truancy rate continue to go down because transportation is one of the issues that's taken off the table.
Put on your headset because it looks like we've got a question from Zane in Silver Spring who wants to talk about this very issue. Zane, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I'm a law student at AU, and I had an opportunity to teach at Anacostia High School for a year, a first period class, so I certainly am familiar with the truancy problem. And it was very difficult as a teacher to plan lessons and to build and even build a repertoire with students when students weren't arriving. And I certainly do agree that Metro and having free transportation might help, and especially when you don't have a bus system, something like rain or it can be too cold can also affect those decisions. But to shift gears a little bit, Chancellor, do you think that involving families and committing families or friends and things like that can be helpful to addressing the truancy problem?
Of course. I think at Anacostia, I know for sure that the principal of Anacostia, the principals over the last couple of years have gone out and done home visits. They walk the streets in the neighborhood in Anacostia and engage families and neighbors in helping to create safe passages because there are some neighborhood issues there. And I always say we are DCPS and we can do this, but we can't do this alone. And so having family members, friends, and community members help is critical.
Zane, thanks so much for your call. Tom Sherwood.
Now, I want to go back to the students. I've said in this program a number of times that if we can get through a 6 or 7 week summer jobs program, everybody's kind of happy if it's not too badly run. And this one's been pretty good, apparently. I haven't heard all the final numbers yet, but I don't quite understand why we can't do summer jobs programs all through this fall and into the winter. And when you mentioned that you're going to pay some students, now some people just get crazy and they say, what do you mean pay students? They ought to go for their own learning and all that stuff. And I'm not talking about paying students to learn. I'm giving them things to do, real life experiences. What are you guys doing?
So this is the connection that I was talking about. We opened 7 new career academies last year in the high wage and high growth industries in the region: IT, health sciences, hospitality, and construction and engineering. And last year we had over 350 young people participating in career pathways work. They also had internships, and about 110 of them were paid. We used Summer Youth Employment Program money to pay them. And they have industry mentors. And what's beautiful about it is businesses actually help us design the curriculum. We have industry advisory board members. They also guarantee internships for our young people. And so we've been in conversations with the Deputy Mayor for Economic Opportunity and the Department of
Courtney
Employment.
Snowden.
Yes.
Courtney Snowden.
And the
She
Department
was on the
of
program last week, wasn't she?
She was Deputy Mayor for Greater Economic
Excuse me for
Development.
interrupting you. She's got a big plate to put some things on there.
She does, but
You're helping her.
she's been working with us. And
Okay.
so we are going to do a pilot at Anacostia and Ballou and Woodson where we try to do paid internships throughout the course of the year for our young people. In my ideal world, and I think this can happen in the next 2 to 3 years, we want to get to a point where every DCPS high school student who wants a paid internship can work during the school year.
We have a question for both you and Kavitha on the phone that I'm going to take in 1 second. But speaking of your ideal world, and this goes to the summer ending as well, if you had your druthers for what the school calendar would look like, how much of a break would students get in the summer?
Not much. I would give them some time off to be with their families, but I would bring kids back, barring temperature issues and whatnot. I think, there's all kinds of research that shows that 8 weeks off in the summer produces massive amounts of summer slide. And so, if we could find our way to a more year-round solution where breaks are sprinkled through the school year, I think that would be my ideal world.
You could probably use my vacation schedule to do that. Be off about every 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But then you spend it here.
Well, this is a great city to visit. I'm one of the 20 million tourists that come to the city every year, except I just happen to live here.
All right, and here's that call I was talking about. We're going to take a call from Mike in Capitol Hill. Mike, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I live on Capitol Hill, and my son is going into 7th grade, and we're looking towards high school eventually. And Eastern High School has gone through a kind of a restructuring. A new principal has been there the last 4 years or so, some other good administrators. They have an international baccalaureate program that I hear is really good. I'm wondering, Carissa and Chancellor Henderson, what your assessment is of Eastern High School these days, as we saw the first graduates from Eastern High School in a while this spring.
Kai
So
Henderson.
I'll jump in and say thank you for that commercial for Eastern High School. And I am absolutely with you. We have a fantastic principal. The school is chock to the rim full with amazing young people doing awesome things. There was an article in the Post last week or two about the amazing gardening program at Eastern in conjunction with City Blossoms. We have kids there who are going on international experiences. We have the IB program. It's absolutely amazing. And the thing that I'll say...
I'm sorry, IB?
Oh, International Baccalaureate.
I'm sorry. Some of us didn't get too far in school ourselves, so we have to know what these things mean.
Thank you. It's a rigorous, internationally recognized credential that our young people can graduate with that says that they are more than ready for college and career. And I think one of the challenges in a place like Eastern, and frankly for DCPS as a whole, is people have these outdated notions of what DCPS is based on what DCPS used to be. And our hashtag for this school year is DCPS Rising, because we
Kind of
are
like the
not.
Wizards.
Oh yeah,
No,
A little bit. And they're
come
doing
on.
all right.
We went to the
DC
playoffs
Rising.
this year. Have faith.
It's not the football team. There isn't bad juju going on here, Tom. The Wizards are doing pretty well.
I'll think of another comparison, but analogy. But keep going, Chancellor.
So we have what I would challenge people to say, and what I'd say to you, caller, is go visit Eastern. When you walk in there and you feel the energy and you talk to those young people and hear about the kind of joyful rigor that they're experiencing, I think you'd feel inspired to send your young person to Eastern.
I don't want to sound like a downer over here, but I think Chancellor, every year, and certainly at WAMU, we report on the awesome things happening at DCPS every year and through the year. But I think what people feel, and what I still get calls about, is not that DCPS is not improving, but it's not improving fast enough. So when we look at a capital commitment, those are 5 points that you said you were evaluating yourself by in 2012. I mean, we're nowhere near any of the hitting those goals.
That's just not true.
Which
and
ones
let me
have
tell
we
you
hit?
why. So our goal for enrollment, which is goal 5, was 47,000. We're now at 49,000. Our student satisfaction.
Is that enrollment for this year?
Enrollment, yes, at this year, and we'll likely surpass 50, right? And we gave ourselves until 2017 to do that, and we have that. We're on track to meeting our student satisfaction goal of 90%.
This is students will like their school.
Yep.
And
this year, our student satisfaction rate is 83%, up 10 points from when we started. So we're progressing nicely. When we look at our graduation rate, we'll get our graduation rate mid-September. But in fact, if you look at the class and my guesstimation by all of our unofficial reports, our graduation rate will be up. I think when you look at the 2017 cohort, that's the cohort that we wrapped our 9th grade academies around, and we're seeing much higher 9th grade promotion rates, which means that 9th graders are likely to graduate in 4 years. So let me just say something on the not fast enough. Show me another school district that has accomplished this much in 5 years or in 8 years. People want a silver bullet. It didn't take DCPS 15 minutes to fall apart, and so it's not going to take DCPS 15 minutes to get it together. But if we're improving farther and faster than other people, that's how we get to the top. And so I think people have incredibly unrealistic expectations about how quickly you can take a equity, how quickly you can produce excellence at scale. It's not just a DCPS issue; it's a charter issue, right? They're trying to provide a world-class education that gives every single kid the very best, and ensuring that that happens quickly. That hasn't happened anywhere, and so I take pride in the progress. I take pride in the fact that we're up 10% in our enrollment over the 5 years that I've been chancellor. I take pride in the fact that the United States Secretary of Education will tell us that we're the fastest improving urban school district in the country. And I take pride in the fact that parents are voting with their feet and saying, like, I don't need you to be fully formed. I will do this with you. That's when success happens. It doesn't just happen because you have the right set of bureaucrats or the right superintendent or the right whatever. It's when a city and its institutions pull together. And I feel like that's where we finally are with DCPS. And so I'm excited about it.
That's Kaya Henderson. She is chancellor for DC Public Schools. You're listening to the Politics Hour on WAMU 88.5. I'm Michael Martinez, sitting in today for Kojo Namdi. We're joined as always by Tom Sherwood. He's our resident analyst, a reporter for NBC4, and by our guest analyst today, Kavitha Cardoza, special correspondent for WAMU 88.5. And I want to ask a question pivoting off of that, because you talked about, show me another school district. And I'm curious just to get your thoughts about what's been happening in New Orleans for the last 10 years. We're fast approaching the 10th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina.
Yes.
And since then, New Orleans has become the great urban laboratory of charter schools. There are charter schools. We have a robust charter network here in Washington as well. And I'm curious to get your thoughts about, when you look at New Orleans and what's been happening there for the past decade, what do you see?
So I think I see an incredible amount of innovation happening in New Orleans. They sort of said to themselves, we can't do it the way we were doing it pre-Katrina, because kids really were not achieving. And so I think you see a lot of creativity and innovation around thinking about how to do school differently. I think it's a work in progress. I think it's too early to claim success, but I do think that things are better than they were previously. I think one of the key challenges is, and this speaks to, my previous answer, this work is done well and sustained when communities are engaged with the work. And I think the big challenge in New Orleans is that the community, the families and community members of New Orleans don't feel invested in the way this change happened. And so I think the big question is whether or not the entire New Orleans community can get together to move forward. Otherwise, I think it's a very fragile set of changes and reforms.
Well, the District of Columbia has had 100,000 new people come in to live into the city. It used to be that 70% of the jobs in this city were held by people who lived in the suburbs. That number has dropped to 55%. People live in the city and have the jobs. This comes from the city's CFO. My concern is whether these young people, there was another study the CFO did that showed that still when people had children, settled down, had children, they would tend to move. But that has slowed, but they still tend to move. How do you get the community of young people who are out biking and doing all the things that millennials and Gen X people want to do, to know that their schools are important too for them, so they'll stay here and not try to move back to the burbs or somewhere?
It's interesting. I actually think that a lot of them are engaged and involved. Many of them are volunteering in our schools. Many of them use some of our school facilities for sports and that kind of thing. One of the ways that we're getting them engaged is through preschool. And so lots of people are willing to come to DCPS for our pre-K3 and pre-K4 programs. And then they're finding delightfully that, in fact, our elementary schools are better than they expected. We have a lot more work to do. But I think when you look at our middle schools, enrollment has been up in our middle grades. And that's something that has traditionally been a problem. But I think that early engagement and getting people into our schools to see what's happening restores people's confidence.
Speaking of bicycling, go ahead. I was going to ask about bicycling.
Okay,
We got an email.
I was going to say I
but-
wasn't happy that Beautification Day was cancelled, because I thought that was a wonderful point in time to get people into the schools.
I mean, here's the thing about Beautification Day, right? There was a time when literally, if we didn't have thousands of volunteers painting and planting and whatnot, that schools looked crazy. Because they were in disrepair and whatnot. But given all of the modernization work that we've had done now, there's not a lot, and given all of the I guess, beautification work done in the past, there's just not a lot of need for that. And what we do need is long-term sustained
So
engagement.
can you explain what
Not
it's
the
been
people-
replaced with? It's
Yeah.
been replaced by an adopt a school.
Yep.
program.
So we want organizations and community members to commit to a school over the course of the year, not just for one day where they get to show up and flash a t-shirt, but where they have a sustained commitment to the school. And we have church groups and, national organizations and local organizations who are adopting schools where they and the schools commit to a long-term plan for things that they're going to work together on over the year. And, I tweeted a couple days ago about DC United adopting Jefferson Academy, and they have a bunch of different things that they're going to do, from supporting families
That's one
to
in Southwest.
motivating. Yes.
It used to be called Jefferson Middle School.
Yes.
That's near me.
Yes, it is. And so
It's all about you, Tom.
Well,
we
no,
want long-term engagement.
It's all about last year. This time last year, we were in the midst of a mayoral campaign where the mayor was saying she wanted to see more done in middle schools. We had David Catania, the independent candidate, saying he wanted reforms to move faster. We had worries about the school boundaries and they were going to change, and people were freaking out, if you use this old phrase, over school boundaries. You just talked to schools. What happened to the big boundary thing that was going to drive the school system into disarray?
Yeah. So see, what had happened was
Don't attack the media.
No. What I found is when you have really complex problems, the best way to solve them is with the community, right? We have some information, but the community has other information. And when we put that together, we come to good solutions. And so the former mayor created the Boundary and Feeder Task Force, which had members from all over the city, DCPS parents, charter parents, community members, and whatnot. And over the course of almost a year, they met regularly to look at all of the data and to plot out a course for us. And they came up with some amazing recommendations that I think were both creative and minimized the potential race war that was supposed to happen as a result, or the economic war that was supposed to happen as a result. They came up with a very thoughtful set of solutions. The mayor accepted their recommendations and began moving forward. Initially, then Mayor Gray. Initially, the candidates said, we're going to make changes to that. And what was one of the most powerful things of my entire time as chancellor was the Washington Posted a poll on whether or not people wanted the boundary and feeder pattern recommendations changed. And some 60% of the people polled said, we don't want these changed. We actually think that these are the right recommendations. And so when the community owns big decisions about what should happen with their schools, that's the best place for us to be. And so we've been implementing the recommendations, and we've been very good about communicating beforehand. We've also been grandfathering people in so that there's not, one big shock to the system. And I think we're doing it in a responsible way that the community respects.
I want to read an email here that we got from Jack, who says, kudos to the chancellor for adding bike riding to the curriculum for all second graders. And I want to ask you to explain what is going to happen with bicycling now being considered a life skill. I will say that I learned how to ride a bike at Lafayette Elementary School, not by a teacher. My dad taught me how to ride a bicycle around the track there, which is now the track's now surrounding a bunch of trailers because you're renovating Lafayette Elementary School. But explain the bike life skill program.
Sure. So we have a program called Cornerstones, which is about creating very challenging lessons that are relevant to real world experiences. And our goal is to have our young people experience joyful rigor, really, in-depth academic rigor, but that they have fun and that these lessons are project-based. And we've developed over 200 of them at every grade level and in most subject areas. And they've been designed by our highest performing teachers. We paid over 100 teachers this summer to design these experiences. And so you have experiences like the second grade biking experience, where young people will, over the course of the unit, learn about biking and bike safety and learn how to bike in their PE class. And then they'll culminate with a biking field trip. And I'm going to go out and ride with the second graders so that.
When is that? What's the date of that?
I don't know off the top of my head, but we can get it to you. But it's not just, beyond biking, right?
Would you ever add swimming?
Yes, so swimming is a new elective this year now that we have so many schools with pools, and we've partnered with the Department of Parks and Rec to help us run our swim program. But we're going to make sure that many of our young people learn how to swim. But it's not just physical stuff, right? So in our chemistry classes, our young people, our 10th graders will learn how to create functional electric batteries that will be able to power cell phones, right? All of our first graders will create a bioenvironment for frogs, right? These are cool, memorable, rigorous activities that all of our young people will experience. And our teachers are on fire.
I brought up
about
swimming
this.
because it was a requirement for graduation where I went to school.
Me
When I
too,
went to
when I
college
was-
at the University of North Carolina, you had to prove that you could swim before.
When
you
I
could
was in
graduate.
high school, you had to swim to graduate.
I want to take a call right here from Phil in Ward 8 who wants to bring the conversation back to violence. Phil, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon.
We have to identify Phil
This
Pinnell.
is Phil Pinnell, isn't it?
Phil Pinnell, who has been a rose and a thorn in various public issues for 40 years or something like that.
Hi, Phil. What's your question?
All right. Very quickly. For the past, I would say 3 years, Ballou High School has had no junior ROTC program, no student government, and no choir. And I hope that something could be done this year to expand, or rather to restore those extracurricular opportunities for the students there. Also, because of this really tragic uptick in youth violence, several community meetings have been held in Ward 8 and also are scheduled. And we've constantly contacted DCPS to participate and have been unable to do so. And we have a major community meeting coming up on youth violence and synthetic drugs on August 31st. And I'm wondering if Chancellor Henderson can at least send someone from her office to participate.
Yeah.
Thank you for your call, Phil.
Two things. First of all, I'm sorry if you haven't gotten a response from our office on invitations. I'll check on that, but I'm happy to have DCPS representation at any of these meetings. And Phil, you can always email me directly at kaya.henderson@dc.gov if you're not getting the response that you need from the rest of my team. But on the extracurricular elective question around choir and whatnot, you're absolutely right, Phil. Many of our high schools have not had the kinds of activities that are engaging to our young people. And so this year I put money in so that high schools could offer way more electives. And so you'll see marching band as an elective. You'll see choir as an elective. You'll see modern dance. You'll see African-American literature. You'll see health problems in urban areas. You'll see classes that speak to kids' hearts and their passions, not just the hardcore academics. We also put in at our high schools 14 athletic and extracurricular coordinators whose whole entire job is to make sure that we have robust extracurricular activities like student government. We're now requiring every high school to have a student government, Phil, and we're making sure that those coordinators are funneling young people into extracurricular experiences because we know that that's as important as the other stuff.
Tom, you get the last question here.
What is the balance now between charter schools and students in the traditional DCPS?
Same as it has been for the last 4 years. We have 56% of the students in public education and charters have 44%.
Does that mean that charter schools have kind of maxed out? Because some people thought we were on a route to have all charter schools, and it seems that you've reversed that slide of
Amen,
public school
brother.
students. And you say you might have how many students this year? 50,000?
We're projected to
You
have
get 50,000?
we're projected to have 49,000, but we're already we're at a higher enrollment today than we were last year this time, and so we expect that we'll hit the 50,000 mark.
So are the charter schools, are you learning to live together better?
There's
or
a task force that's
Okay.
Yep,
Tell me.
so-
Oh, good. Well, give me the news because I'm out of the loop. What's
The
this?
Deputy Mayor for Education just launched a new cross-sector task force to help figure out how these two sectors work together. I think one of the big things that came out of the boundary and feeder pattern task force was families are saying, look, we have too many schools. There's too much choice. I'm tired of lotterying to get my kid into a decent school. And what do these two systems, how do they work work together? Are we spending too much money on two different systems?
So those were my questions. Now can you answer?
And so, and so I think that it is time for the city, 17 or 18 years after we started the charter school movement, which was supposed to both compete with the public school system and in an effort to make improvements and be an innovation lab where we could learn from. I think it's time to ask ourselves, have we accomplished the goals and what's the right path forward? I think
Does that include, excuse me for interrupting, does that include merging the two systems again to one system?
And you got 20 seconds to answer that.
I don't think it is about merging, but I think it's about seeking opportunities for cooperation and collaboration and at least planning in ways that make sense for the city.
Kaya Henderson, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck with the start of schools next week. That's Kaya Henderson. She is chancellor for the DC Public School System. Tom Sherwood, it's been a blast as always.
Good. Have a good weekend.
And Kavitha, thank you for gracing us with your presence and
Thanks,
the dates again on the documentary.
September 14th onwards.
Very cool. I can't wait to hear it. And I ended today's show a little early because there is a person whose last day is today at WAMU who I want to thank on behalf of everybody on the entire Kojo Namdi show team, and that's Andrew Chadwick, longtime engineer at the station who has piloted this broadcast many times, piloted the Diane Rehm show many times, piloted the Kojo show many times. He's worked tirelessly behind the scenes on Morning Edition and the early hours with Matt McCleskey. He's been on Flappable. He's been indispensable. He has been a phenomenal colleague to all of us, an incredible friend who so many of us are looking forward to staying in touch with and cheering on for his next adventure. So thanks for everything, Andrew, and good luck. You'll be missed more than you'll ever know. I'm Michael Martinez. I've been sitting in for Kojo. We'll see you all next week.